Have you ever had one of those days where nothing seems to go right? Maybe you gave it your all, at work, in school, at home, but no matter what you did, it just didn't work out. You felt worn out, disappointed, maybe even like giving up. Well, the story we're about to hear is about a man who felt exactly like that. His name was Simon Peter. He was a fisherman by trade, a man of the sea, strong, hard-working, practical. But one morning, after a long and disappointing night, everything changed for him. Not because the fish came back, but because someone stepped into his boat. Someone who saw beyond the empty nets, beyond the frustration. Someone who saw him. Let's go back to that day by the Sea of Galilee. It was early morning, the kind of morning where the mist hovers gently above the water and the world is just beginning to stir. Fishermen were finishing up after a long night of work. Normally, they'd be hauling in baskets of fish, but today, there was nothing. Simon Peter and his partners were among them. They'd spent the whole night on the water, casting nets, waiting, hauling them back in, only to find them empty, again and again. Their hands were raw from the rope. Their backs ached. Still no fish. No catch meant no income. No income meant no food on the table. It wasn't just frustrating, it was discouraging. Maybe you've had days like that, where you tried and tried and tried again, but nothing worked out. That's where Simon was. And he didn't know it yet, but someone was walking toward him. Someone who would change everything. By now, people had started to gather on the shore. A teacher named Jesus was there. He was unlike any other teacher they'd heard. He spoke with authority, with compassion, with power. Word had been spreading. He healed the sick. He gave sight to the blind. He taught about God like he knew him personally. And that morning he came to the Sea of Galilee. As he began to speak, more and more people gathered, crowding in, trying to hear. But the crowd was pressing in so tightly that Jesus could barely be seen. So, he did something unexpected. He turned toward one of the boats, Peter's boat, and asked if he could borrow it. Just a little push from shore, he said, enough to teach the crowd from the water. Now, Peter could have said no. He was tired, frustrated. The last thing he probably wanted was someone taking up his time and space. But something about Jesus was different. So Peter agreed. And from that simple fishing boat, Jesus taught the crowd. His words were clear and kind, yet full of deep truth. About life, about God, and about the heart. Peter listened. He didn't say much, but something stirred inside him. Even though he didn't know it yet, Jesus wasn't just using his boat. He was reaching for his heart. When the teaching was done, the crowd began to drift away. People returned to their homes, their chores, and their lives. But Jesus wasn't finished. He turned to Peter and said something unexpected. Jesus said, "Take the boat out into deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Peter blinked. Was he serious? They'd just come back from the deep. All night they'd tried. Nothing had worked. And now, in the daylight, when fishing was even harder, Jesus wanted them to go again. It didn't make sense. But even in his confusion, Peter respected Jesus. Something about his presence stirred trust. So he said, "We've worked hard all night and haven't caught a thing. But because you say so, I will let down the nets." And so out they went, back into the deep. Peter and his friends lowered their nets once more. Maybe part of him still doubted. Maybe he thought, this won't work. But he did it anyway. Then, it happened. Suddenly, the nets tugged hard, the ropes tightened, the boat tilted. Something powerful was pulling. Peter and the others grabbed the nets and tried to haul them in. Fish. So many fish. The net was bursting. They waved for help. Another boat rushed over. Together they hauled in fish after fish, so many that both boats nearly sank under the weight. joy, laughter, shouts of amazement. But as the excitement faded, Peter looked at Jesus, and he knew this wasn't just about fish. This was a miracle. The man in his boat wasn't just a teacher. Peter suddenly felt small, not because Jesus shamed him, but because Peter saw the truth. He saw his doubt, his weakness, his sin. He dropped to his knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man." But Jesus didn't move away. He didn't reject him or list his flaws. He looked at Peter with deep kindness and said, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you'll fish for people." It didn't mean hooks or nets. It meant helping others find hope, forgiveness, and purpose. Jesus was calling Peter to something greater, not just to make a living, but to make a difference. Peter, James, and John brought their boats back to shore, but they didn't clean the nets this time. They didn't go back to fishing. They left everything and followed Jesus. What began as an ordinary day turned into the start of an extraordinary journey. Peter could have stayed stuck in disappointment. He could have said no, but he let Jesus step into his boat. That small act of obedience led to a miracle. It changed his life forever. So, what can we take from Peter's story? Lesson 1. Even in failure, Jesus sees our potential. Peter thought the night had been a waste. He was tired and discouraged. But Jesus looked past the empty nets and saw something more. Not just a fisherman, but a future leader, a disciple, a world changer. Lesson 2. Obedience opens the door to the impossible. Peter didn't think trying again made any sense, but he obeyed. Not because he understood, but because he trusted. And in that simple act of obedience, he witnessed a miracle. Lesson 3. Jesus calls us just as we are. Peter felt unworthy, even ashamed. But Jesus wasn't looking for someone perfect. He was looking for someone willing, and he still is. So maybe today, your nets are empty too. Maybe you feel tired, disappointed, on the edge of giving up. But here's the good news. Jesus isn't waiting for you to have it all together. He's just asking, "Can I step into your boat?" And when you say yes, even with doubt, even with fear, you never know what miracle might be waiting right on the other side of your obedience. Maybe today, your nets are empty. You've tried everything. You're tired, discouraged, ready to pack up and go home. But don't miss this. Jesus is still asking to step into your boat. He's not asking for perfection. He's asking for permission. He's saying, "Will you trust me? Will you try one more time with me?" Because you never know what miracle is waiting on the other side of your obedience. Let's talk. What spoke to you most from this story? Have you ever experienced a moment when obedience to God changed everything? Is there something you feel Jesus is asking you to do today? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. And if you were encouraged by this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Bible stories that bring hope to everyday life.